Today's talk is titled Have Courage and Be Kind, to be delivered by Ted Key. Ted was born in America's heartland, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and moved to Milwaukee at age 5. He grew up in an artistic and musical family, attended public schools, and was recognized as a National Scholastic Award recipient for his visual arts talents. Ted graduated from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and with his BFA and post-baccalaureate certification in art education. He moved to Arizona, where he met and married Rebecca. They relocated to Silicon Valley, where he worked in tech for 5 years before returning to his first love, education. Ted was privileged to teach some of California's top women students at Notre Dame High School in San Jose for 25 years. Retired now in Cambria, he sits on our CCSD Policy Standing Committee and the North Coast Advisory Council. He's performed in the last 3 Cambria Follies, sings for the Cambria Chorale, and rescues and transports sea mammals to the Marine Mammal Center out of Morro Bay. He enjoys creating ceramics in his studio and is also taking voice lessons from our incredible Jan Musara. He believes in our UU principle number 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Ted Key.
Again, a special Mother's Day to you all. The impact of mothers or mother figures in our lives looms incredibly large. In my case, how do I even begin to speak about a woman whose status for me stands just slightly below sainthood? The title, Have Courage and Be Kind, is prompted by a piece my wife wrote a few years ago as a reflection about her relationship with my mom. Her interpretation of the parting words of Cinderella's mother to her daughter from the 2015 film speaks wonderfully to Mom's life. I quote from Rebecca's piece. I thought first about the words be kind. I was taught to be nice, which is very different from be kind. Be nice has to do with smiling and being polite, not being a bother, not creating controversy, being well-behaved in any situation, not necessarily saying what you think, and not doing anything that will upset anyone. Be kind is to engage authentically, speak out, and respect others in whatever situation they are in. It feels more real and less about posturing as an always agreeable person. Having courage is to not be afraid to trust your own instincts, work hard to achieve your goals, and moving forward, believing you can go far. I hope in telling my mom's story, you will see that those traits were embedded in her days and years. I need to introduce you to Patricia Ann Miller, the small town girl with incredible talent. Born in the heartland of Iowa to my homemaker grandmother and pharmacist grandfather, she showed gifted musical abilities at a young age. Patty would convince kids in the neighborhood to learn songs, hang blankets on a clothesline, and put on a show for anyone who would come. She attended public schools, where she was an unexceptional student but exhibited extraordinary talent and voice. Although she enjoyed singing in high school choir, my mom was always a soloist. She became quite well known in Iowa and bravely traveled to Boston for a summer opera season. The next year, she traveled to California to live with her Aunt Aline and to sing with the Long Beach Opera Company. Orange County was home for retired President Herbert Hoover. Mom was even tapped to sing happy birthday to her fellow Iowan, and it was celebrated with newspaper publicity. The only controversy was the oversized 250-pound cake, since sugar was strictly rationed at the time. They got away with it by serving 5,000 pieces to the public. Decades later, along with gifts, money, and best wishes, Rebecca, Ray, and I received her dramatic rendition of Happy Birthday to You on our voicemails. Dad would contribute in the background, and it was always the highlight of our special day. Mom's underlying goal was to bring joy to every person around her, and people always responded to her smile, cheerfulness, and generosity. Back in 1945, my Army Sergeant Dad came home to Iowa City to finish his education, and he ran into Mom on the university campus. She remembered him from high school and was excited to have a conversation with him. When he asked her to join him for coffee, she accepted immediately. It was love from the start. And not long after graduation, Dad popped the question, and the romance of the century began. Dad was a very accomplished and heavily recruited French horn player who played first chair with the Indianapolis and Houston symphonies. Dad's story will have to wait until another time, and it's doubtful I can condense it into 25 minutes. The nomadic life of the orchestra suited her just fine, and she'd never known Dad as anything but an accomplished musician. However, when Dad came back from Europe, like many in the service, his priorities shifted to settling down, having a family, and a home. The orchestral life of traveling, as well as the nepotism he observed, wasn't in line with his goals. He enrolled in the journalism school at Northwestern University. This was a huge and difficult shift for Mom, but her unquestioning support of his career went with him to Evanston, and she waited tables at Cooley's Cupboards Cafe while Dad focused on his degree. I believe this was when Mom fell in love with living by a big body of water. Later, Lake Michigan was minutes away for over 50 years of her life, and she never wanted to be anyplace else. After Dad graduated from Northwestern, they returned to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where Dad wrote the music editorial page for the Gazette, while Mom went full steam ahead with local performances and recitals. I arrived 10 years later. Those years became springboards to a much larger life in Milwaukee when in 1959, Dad joined the Milwaukee Journal as art editor. Mom quickly lined up with the top singers of Milwaukee and taught at the Milwaukee Conservatory of Music and in our home. Within a year, she and another soprano, along with the fascinating dramaturge Claire Richardson, established the Skylight Opera Company, which continues to this day. The Skylight began with a stage in a downtown alleyway where Mom and her fellow performers sang opera in English for an audience that had not been exposed to opera. The name came from onlookers who watched performances from upstairs windows. The Skylight was a huge hit, especially with the wealthy set. I have wonderful memories of moving props on stage and being around actors with such infectious energy. Mom and Dad were the it couple in Milwaukee during the 60s and early 70s. While Dad didn't make a big paycheck as a newspaper writer, he and my mom had sparkling cachet with local society and were invited to all the best gatherings. My mom enjoyed singing, teaching, and performing, but what she truly treasured was supporting my dad as he became a regional art expert and coach, traveling the country to bring knowledge and appreciation back to the Cream City by the lake. Mom delighted in taking care of their cozy home, vacuuming, doing laundry, cooking dinner nightly, and enjoying every day with the love of her life. She wrote these words for her obituary. Pat always thought of herself as a homemaker. She and Donald, who preceded her in death, were married for 50 exciting years. Never a dull moment, she always said. Rebecca loved visiting Milwaukee, watching Mom charm any and every worker who came to the house. Gardener, tree trimmer, plumber, or delivery driver, they would get their choice of Snickers bars, chocolate toffee, Reese's peanut butter cups, or whatever candy was on the coffee table. Please take a stack along with you, she'd say, much to their surprise and aw shucks delight. Everything was going gangbusters until my dad was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at 42 years old. MS is a cruel disease that slowly shuts down control of the extremities. For Dad, the legs were the first to go. We rallied as a family to help with the logistics of his job, visiting galleries, too soon by wheelchair, and making a work area in the house so he could continue to meet the newspaper deadlines. Although there were real financial concerns, Mom met those obstacles with her signature energy, enthusiasm, and constant optimism. Decades later, Mom told Rebecca, "When it was clear that Don would need to retire after only a few years of MS, I knew what my life's purpose was. I spent so many years playing, at singing and performing. Now I was joyful at knowing what my retirement would be, spending time with Don and doing whatever needed to be done." It was Mom who took on the major workload of shopping, cooking, finances, cleaning, and keeping an athletic Wild Mountain hippie kid busy. Early on, they switched cars, so Dad drove the automatic and Mom, as you can see, drove the Bug. In that skirt, mind you. Mom was always a fashion gal. She loved shopping, buying a style in 3 colors, and fascinated her grandchild Ray when she put on her face and wigs every morning. Fortunately, she had a reasonable paying gig singing at Temple Emmanuel, the largest of the many temples in Milwaukee. As a kid in elementary years, I well remember a half-empty school on Jewish holidays. 3 of the 4 temple choir members comprised of the best singers in Milwaukee were Protestant. I always got a chuckle out of that. In addition to hearing opera music on a daily basis, I became very familiar with Jewish melodies as she performed through the years. Mom joyed in rehearsing. She told Rebecca that she would have rehearsed forever, even if there were no future performances. Dressing up to play a character was a lifelong delight, and opera was a perfect vehicle for her love of make-believe and her overwhelming need to make people happy. My folks weren't regular churchgoers, even though my grandparents were devout. The daughter of a Dunkard elder, my grandmother, wasn't allowed to play cards, dance, or smoke, and didn't have her first glass of wine until when, at 80, her doctor told her a glass now and again could be healthful. But I can't recall seeing her drink another one. Mom sang weekly at the temple, but she performed in different religious settings. She developed a very personal spiritual philosophy, appreciating the outlook of Christian Science. In the end, all her Jewish friends proclaimed her to be an honorary Jew. Mom encouraged me to visit many different faiths, but I tended to see it more as a set of inner values and beliefs, not as a part of a local church. Look at me now, delivering a talk at a Unitarian Universalist community, a setting where my Buddhist leanings born in my college years are totally supported. Guess Mom knew what she was talking about. What I really need to expand on is my mother's incredible selflessness. Within a few years, Dad had needed help with everything, as any quadriplegic person would: feeding, personal care, dressing, meds, transfers to and from the car or chair, an incredible feat for a small woman. My mom took unbelievable care of my dad for 24/7 for over 30 years, and she cherished every day. Rebecca has told many friends how my mom would dance with the dog in the living room on a daily basis, sharing her happiness with the beloved Sheltie. Muffy would hear Mom say something and stay quiet. But if Dad called out, Muffy would bark and get Mom to the bedroom post haste. Muffy knew when the oven buzzer went off and when the doorbell rang. All three were a smooth running team, day after day, year after year. Rebecca remembers being in the house when Mom said, "The strength in this house is Don." And Dad responded, "No, Pat is the strength." My wife describes their marriage as a Sunday night Hallmark Hall of Fame movie. Dad was the quiet intellectual thinker, and Mom was the playful optimist. Dad kept Mom grounded in current affairs and always lent a listening ear to help her sort through problems as they arose. I hardly ever heard a cross word between them. They were the ultimate team, and their devotion to each other stands as a monument to love and a rarely paralleled dedication. Through the years, Mom researched solutions for movement and mobility, voice recognition for the TV, Hoyer lifts in the bedroom and garage as board transfers became more difficult. Their favorite Sunday morning was for Mom to dress and transfer Dad to their land yacht, Buick Roadmaster, to drive up to Port Washington, enjoying a brunch of pancakes by the lake. In 1996, the time came when Dad needed more care than Mom could offer. Even with excellent VA hospitalization, Dad died within a few months in May. I'm convinced that my mom single-handedly prolonged my dad's life by years, if not decades. It was devastating for all of us, and we didn't know how Mom would do without him. He had truly been her entire life. Mom's courage emerged again in her mid-70s when she took up ballroom dancing, filling a long-time desire. She would send me films of her dance class, and having two left feet myself, I simply could not believe my mom doing the samba, rumba, along with other steps and spins. She looked half her age and delighted in dancing with her instructor, Jeremy. It was a triumph to behold. In 2001, when I was hospitalized for months with life-threatening pancreatitis with pseudocysts, Mom came out to live with Rebecca and Ray and returned several times as I had 6 surgeries over 3 years. It's a time I don't revisit often, but Mama Bear grilled the doctors such that they actually would call the nurses' station to determine if the coast was clear to do rounds. She was a daily advocate for me, just like she was for Dad. Her generosity was abundant for Rebecca and me, and she simply adored her grandchild. "Can't take it with you," was indeed her viewpoint. Not a holiday passed that the three of us didn't receive seasonal decorations, t-shirts, candy treats, gift certificates, and holiday hats. She loved to celebrate anything with unmitigated fun and joy. There had been conflicts on both sides of their families, some of which separated members for decades, and she never wanted that to happen with us. When Rebecca was pregnant, she and Mom would go shopping with abandon. My wife was the best-dressed mother-to-be on the planet and would model the purchases for Dad after each trip to Kohl's or the Boston store. Ray got the same shopping sprees with a fur-lined ballroom gown at 4. And I think Mom bought me multiple colors of turtlenecks until I was 50. So how has all this affected me beyond what I've mentioned? Courage. I returned to college when I realized that my well-paying factory job was simply unfulfilling, not sure of what the future would bring. I'd like to think that leaving my hometown with only my belongings to start a new career across the country took courage. Then, almost 30 years in a high school classroom required a fair amount of courage. You're on stage for over 100 students each day, never giving up, helping them to discover their own confidence and gifts. Surviving my near-fatal case of pancreatitis, multiple surgeries, and 3 months in the hospital unable to eat or drink, took tenacity and willpower. My amazing surgeon told me that my age, physical condition, but mostly my perseverance had saved my life. He called me his magnum opus, his greatest work. Kindness. This was a tough one for me. I watched my mom's charm, empathy, and love attract people to her throughout her life, and I don't see that in myself. My wife says that I'm incredibly kind, supportive of her dreams and efforts, loving her and Ray exactly who they are. She tells me I'm an amazing loving father, and I appreciate that view. But when writing this, I couldn't really conjure up a sense of kindness in my personality. What I did think of was when I had stepped up for others. I know Notre Dame parents found me open, patient, and caring with their daughters, and the girls worked hard in my classroom for my approval and respect. My homeroom students gave me the nickname of Mama Key as a sign of their affection, not to mention choosing me to be the helmeted human ball on a skateboard in teacher bowling class competitions. I can share details later over coffee. I also hope that rescuing and offering second chances for rescued marine mammals might count. It may be a more practical and less emotional kindness, but I do care greatly about making the world a better place. I've been quite active in our own community, voicing opinions, some not always held by others, engaging authentically, standing up for what I believe, while also working to respect others' situations, trying to make life better for Cambria and our world. So teaching with kindness and volunteering seems to fit, but any comparison to my mom is just a stretch too far for me. I believe my mother modeled compassion and believing in the golden rule that leads me to aspire to her connection to everyone she met. Whether or not I see sufficient kindness in how I live my life, my mother will be the model for me as I live my remaining years. I like to think Mom would know she had been something special when her grandchild read the following at her memorial dinner. Now I'm going to try it. Okay. Grandma, though I will miss you terribly, I know it was your time to go. I had 26 amazing years to know and love you immensely. You taught me to be kind, to live life without regret, to do the things you love, and to not be afraid to be yourself. I know you are finally at peace in the next life and are reunited with Grandpa. You will forever hold a large part of my heart, and I will take you with me as long as I live. Ray wears Mom's wedding band on her neck chain. Excuse me. It would be unfair not to give Mom the last word today. Here is her version of Vici d'Arte from Tosca by Giacomo Puccini. And it's, thank you. Sorry. And the recording is easily over 50 years old. So thank you.